job search burnout it's a real thing. It's June, and especially if you've been searching for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, maybe it gets really, really hard. It wears on the soul. Job searching in general, whether you do it for a day, a month, or a year, it stinks. It's lonely. It's confusing. It doesn't work the way we think it should. We have expectations about getting hired that always seem to take longer than it should. So I'm here today to yet again give you another way to think about how to look at the job search. I've talked before at least a half a dozen times. There are videos on my YouTube channel about how to look at your job search to have a better frame of mind, to get better results, but most importantly, to maintain that good attitude, realize the benefits of what you're going through, even though it's difficult. And so I've given you different ways to do this, tactically, mechanically, statistically. But today I thought, I'm always looking for new ways to kind of illustrate the same points, because I know we all think differently, and certain messages, sometimes repetition helps us remember and realize things or make it click, but also different stories and different perspectives also have a way of helping you with that. So I want to do that today. And I want to talk about a story from my life with somebody that I worked with, and on the recruitment side of things, but it has the exact parallels to what a lot of you are going through on the job candidate side of things. And the first thing that I want to say, I always like to benchmark any talk like this with why we get stressed out in the first place. And much of the time, our stresses in life come from our expectations. And I'm not talking, let's put aside for a second any grave situation that you have, a death, a divorce, anything of that nature that is obviously traumatic and traumatizing in ways. But when it comes to most of what we do, the everyday walking around lives that we lead, much of our stress comes from our expectations, the way we think things ought to be, as if we are truly the center of the universe and everything should revolve around us and happen in a manner that makes sense to us or that we believe it to be true. And one of the things that I always like to say is, whenever you don't understand something, it just doesn't make any sense to you. I always tell people, everything makes sense with enough information. It's how somebody's behaving, what somebody says, what somebody does or doesn't do. But when it comes to our own lives, our own careers, our own job searches, we have expectations about the value we can bring and why somebody should desire us based on our historical performance. But the fact of the matter is, your job searching success has literally nothing to do with how well you do your job. These are skills that you likely don't have, or at least haven't practiced them in this format. Marketing yourself, selling yourself, high levels of communication, all of this stuff. These are things you're just not an ace at. You get paid to do something else. And our expectations of how long a job search should take, or whether it should be fair, as if life is fair, it just isn't true. And so I want you to start there and just remember that and park that for right now. But I want to tell you about this woman, Jen, who I absolutely love. She was a client of Mile Walks. We would recruit job candidates for her and her company. We built a relationship that lasted a number of years in a client type of relationship. And we became friends, I would say. And then she would seek my counsel on things outside of work and inside of work. When it came to her career, she decided she wanted to leave the organization that she and I were working together to support. And she took a new job. That job didn't turn out very well. And she'd reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to be leaving this organization. Could we get together? I'd love to talk with you. So we got together. When we got together, I said to her, I'd love for you to come and work with me at Mile Walk and be a recruiter, an executive recruiter, and I can teach you the ropes. You're a corporate recruiter. She had a good understanding of recruitment processes, was an awesome corporate recruiter. She was a joy to work with as a client of mine. And I thought, I can teach you what you need to know about being an executive recruiter. She was game. And she was interested, so I brought her on to Mile Walk. But the one thing that I said to her before, she came to the organization is, I need you to be committed to give this a shot, because you're going to go through some difficult times, things that you think should work out a particular way or not. I need you to understand the kinds of things that are going to happen, what this is going to look like, how difficult what it is that we do. Executive recruitment is the single greatest, most difficult job I've ever done in my life. And there are so many skill sets that you absolutely need in order to be successful. And I want you to think about the level of difficulty. You're working on behalf of a client that you need to go and recruit somebody else who doesn't work for you or for them. You have to make 2 sales to make 1, and you have the only product in the world that can actually say no to the sale. So there is an awful lot outside of your control. So there are a certain set of disciplines and protocols and operating behaviors and other things that you need to do, not to mention all the skills that you're going to need to build. But I will teach you. I will take my time. I will invest in you to get this right. But the one thing that I need you to do is I need you to commit. I need you to mentally make a commitment. You can make it verbal to me, but I need you to make it true to yourself that you will, heads down for 2 years, pour your heart and soul into this, not think about quitting, because you're going to have these ups and these downs. It's a huge odyssey. But I guarantee you, if you just start, in 2 years from now, you won't believe what your life will look like if you do what I say, if you stay true to the protocols and the principles and the practices, and you do the work day in and day out. And here's the last thing I'm going to say. There's 22 days in a month, generally speaking, that you will work. On 20 of those days, you will end up empty, zeros. It will look like a failure of a day, but nothing could be further from the truth. And 2 of those days, you're going to make placements and you're going to get big paydays, but the other 20 are going to be a grind. And so when you look at each month, there's a certain bogey you want to have in your mind that you get your salary that I will give you, which will be a modest salary, a base salary. And then there will be 2 huge bonus checks, so to speak, because 2 of those days you're going to make placements, and that's going to be a lot of money, but it's going to look like 0, 0, 0, 0, big, 0, 0, 0, big. And so you need to understand that. And so at the end of each month, you can look at how you did, but each day that you work, you're going to be building a portfolio of candidates. You're going to be building your skills. You're going to be looking at the no pile. The no pile is going to get big. The yes pile might be empty or stay small each day. So you need to understand that this is a box. It's a process. But you got to commit to the process. You can't just be happy on the days you win and sad on the days you lose. Otherwise, 90% of the time, you're going to be miserable. Who understands what I'm saying so far? So when you look at your success, it's found in the doing of the processes and being disciplined and staying true to your recruitment. So here's what we'll do. I will get the clients. I will get our searches, the jobs that we are going to recruit for. I will educate you on who the client is, what they need. We'll go through all the practices. I'll teach you how to operate the cold calls to recruit the job candidates, and so on, how to screen them. You screen them, you pass them to me. I will manage the relationship with the client. We will put the candidates in. I know that statistically that every 2.7 candidates that we send out into the world, we make a placement. So what I need you to focus on is not the placement. I need you to focus on high quality candidates that actually will make good potential employees for our clients. And if you send me 3, statistically, this is years of Mile Walk's statistics, we will actually make a placement. So for every 6 or so, you're going to make 2 placements, if not better. So I said to her, okay, so let's go. So she worked a couple of weeks. She'd found some candidates, and wouldn't you know it, she made a placement. She said, this is great. This is the check and the payday's great. The process is great. Everything's working. She works another couple of weeks, makes another placement. So far, so good. Then we get into a situation where she's working, right? 22 days 22 days of the month, 20 she ends up empty. A couple of those days she makes placements. Each day she's building her book of business, her job candidate portfolio. She's meeting people who are leads in marketing, in sales, in operations, in project management, in program offices. She's meeting engineers and all the different types of roles that we would recruit for. And then she started in the fall. About beginning of the summer, maybe 6 months in, we had an opportunity to work with a client who had a great job. They were looking for somebody to build their knowledge practice. It was a very large, privately held organization. Jen did a masterful piece of recruiting, found 3 candidates. And what she did was she submitted the candidates to me. I evaluated the candidates. These were fantastic. The client interviewed the candidates. The client loved every one of them. The client would have hired every one of them. They only needed one. They go through this process. And what ultimately happened was the client, without getting into all the details, completely botches up this process. They literally would have hired all 3 of the candidates if they could have. They would have hired any of the 3, but as it turned out, they botched up this process so badly without going into the details for brevity, and because it's not even that germane to this story, is they ended up empty. We lost all 3 candidates for a variety of reasons. One decided to leave early. The other one decided she wanted to take a different job. And then the third one, they offered it to 2 of them, decided to choose another job. The behavior that the client demonstrated caused us to no longer work with the client. It was such an awful situation. It was nearly impossible to screw this up, but they managed to do it. But anyway, the more important thing about this element of the story is how it affected Jennifer, because she emotionally could not recover from something that she thought was right in her hand. And what I tried to explain to her is this is going to happen, but the reason that we recruit so many candidates, the reason that we keep our process going irrespective of what happens on any given day, what any job candidate might do if they wig out, or a client who mishandles a recruitment process, no matter what happens, we control what we can control. And you will be more successful based on where you place your attention than your ability. But the fact that you are placing your attention so greatly on something you have absolutely no control over is making it difficult for you to actually function. And this is what was happening. So she worked a couple of more months, and then she came to me. She says, Andy, I just can't handle the ups and the downs. And I was so disappointed that 9 months into this process where she was having success, but then had one mega hiccup, because it wasn't even a failure because she did everything absolutely beautifully, that she could not wrap her mind around the fact that something outside of her control or what she thought was unfair happened, which in her mind cost her money. So she ended up leaving. Then what happened is within the next few months, we ended up placing 6 of her candidates. She literally in 1 year would have earned 3 times the amount of money that she had earned as a corporate recruiter had she stuck with it. She was so close. And when I said I need you to commit mentally to 2 years and not really worry about the ups and the downs, but just think at the end of the day, this is a black box. You're going to go in, you're going to come out. And so the reason I'm sharing this story with you is because she would have been ragingly successful had she just maintained consistent, kept her focus in the right place. And what a lot of the job candidates that I coach do is their attention is placed in the wrong place. And the reason that they are so burnt out is because they are so focused on the outcome instead of falling in love with the process. And while I'm not telling you need to love a job search, if you are in it, it behooves you to gain the benefits of the experience. Think about all the skills you're learning, the networking that should be an ongoing thing that you are now getting a chance to actually practice, the ability to actually write crafty, effective networking messages to people you should be maintaining relationships on an ongoing basis with, your ability to actually continue to nurture and grow your network, reaching out to new people each week just because. And all of the other things that you should be doing, the selling skills that you should have, knowing how to be deliberate and intentional with your career. These are things that you should be doing on an ongoing basis. So when it comes to your job search, the reason most people become burnt out is because as it drags on for so many reasons. Typically, you start in a spot where you are screwing things up because you are unconsciously incompetent about what you actually need to be doing, the right kind of activities that will lead to to results, where you're spending a lot of time drafting a resume that is ineffective, putting it in an applicant trashing system that is one of the least effective ways to actually attain a job interview, let alone a job. And you're focusing on a lot of things because you do not know. And that's okay that you do not know. But when you understand and get into a situation where you can identify what those high yield activities are and you start focusing on them, that's a great start. When you start doing them and doing them in a disciplined fashion, that's another great step. And when you are focusing on all the things that you can control and the outputs that you can generate that nobody can ever prevent you from generating, like contacting organizations and contacting bosses or networking effectively, or all the things that you can do that no one can prevent you from doing, when you start taking control of that, you will feel more in control. And typically when we address a problem or we tackle a problem, our nerves, our emotions will relax more. We will feel better about it, even if we're not getting the results that we're getting. But when your focus is on, well, life isn't fair, or I'm too young, or I'm too old, or why I was perfect for that job, why didn't I get it? There are so many things that you're doing incorrectly. But if you can get focused on what you can control and start learning the mechanics of what a good job search looks like, and then doing it, and then if you're doing a good job search, if you are not getting the results that you are hopeful that you would get, then looking and analyzing the data effectively, that becomes another exercise that you need to do. So when you're going through all of this, a big reason why you're burned out is because of your faulty expectations and also where you're placing your attention. So I want to get you focused on the fact that I want you to do what you can control. I want you to remember that it only takes one. When you are going through a disciplined approach, and I recommend my job search challenge, you could find out more about that on my YouTube channel. But as you are going through and consistently identifying organizations, reaching out to them in a proactive manner with some very, very thoughtful messages that you can craft to people who either can potentially hire you or get you to somebody that can hire you, and you are doing that on a day in and day out basis, as you can do that consistently and evaluate the results and then make the adjustments based on what is happening and what isn't happening, you could be job searching and completely qualified for companies and roles that perhaps just aren't hiring right now. So what's your secondary skill? What's your secondary option? Do you need to make adjustments? And so just because that's your ace skill doesn't necessarily mean that's the job you're going to take. So it's triangulating all this stuff, but much of the burnout comes from, like I said, faulty expectations, focusing your attention in the wrong place. And I need to bring you back to getting into control. And much like Jennifer, focus on the day in and day out, and knowing that it only takes one. For her, it was really only two a month, give or take. Anything else was gravy. Anything less was just a month that was poor performance or poor luck. But I know a lot of you, what you do is you haphazardly look. Then maybe you get an interview on the line, just like she had a client on the line where she should have had a payday. And then what you do is you throw all your emotional eggs, not to mention physical eggs, in one basket. And then when that doesn't work out, or they don't move fast enough, or they ghost you, right? Your emotions go down in the tank. And then what? Then you need to prospect again, instead of prospecting on a daily basis and never worrying about what happens that is not in your control, because you have so many balls in the air that it won't matter if one of them falls. Who understands what I'm saying? Who's guilty of the emotional roller coaster? It's okay I understand that, right? There are ups and downs to this, but who's guilty of the emotional roller coaster because of what somebody else is doing, what somebody else is not doing, calling me back, getting back to me, making that referral, getting me, my date and time for my next interview, right? Who's guilty of that? And so my big message here is recognize that you are in a process that you are generally inexperienced with. And even if you've job searched before, you do it infrequently. And even if you job searched before, things might be different now. I spoke with a woman. We did a case study the other night on Tuesday. She hadn't job searched in 36 years. Talk about different. So I know it's tough. I know it's hard. I know you feel like you're working hard, and maybe you are, but you got to be working on the right activities. You got to be making sure you're gaining the benefits of the experience. You got to be making sure that your attention is in the right place, because where you place that attention is going to have a lot to do with how you feel. So I hope Jen's story gave you another illustration of the importance of the discipline and the focus on the process as opposed to the outcome. When you put a resume together, the only goal is to get an interview. When you get in the interview, the only goal is to get the next interview. If you're worried about, well, why am I not getting the job fast enough? Your focus isn't in the right place. And what that does is it forces you to not operate in the most effective manner, in the most, and it hampers your ability to be your best at any moment in time. And so this is a multi-step process that you need to go through, but I need your focus to be in the right place. All right, so I hope that helped. If you enjoyed that, click the like button, share it, because there are a lot of people that are burned out on job searching, and it only takes a few weeks or a few months to get you really, really burnt out. And I know some of you come here week in and week out for months on end. So I'm sending you good juju. I'm always looking for ways to get you to look at things a little bit differently, to lift your spirits and get your performance better. So I hope that helped. I really do.